Hi kids, it's Mr. Idugwich. We're going to switch things up a little bit here and do one of these new Find the Evidence pieces. So you should have a set of markers, crayons, or colored pencils. Again, if you don't have them, just use a pencil to underline. It's really not that big of a deal as long as you're underlining the right piece of information. So I'm going to show you the front of this packet so that you don't get confused. This came in your new set, so it should be in that manila envelope, but it's the January edition. And if you open it up, it's the very first page. And we celebrated Dr. Martin Luther King's birthday on Monday of this week. And we haven't really talked about it. Usually we do, but because of the circumstances, we just haven't gotten around to it yet. So I'm glad and happy to be able to present this to you because he was a very important man and he did a lot for our country. So the first thing I'm going to do is read this to you, and then I'm going to read the questions. Then I'm going to pause the video and I'm going to have you read it again or go through and highlight your answers. So if you can remember where they are, that's fine, but you will likely have to read all or part of it again once, twice, or 3 times just to find all the answers. So before I read it, I am going to label my paragraphs because that's just a good habit to get into when we're doing things like this, so that you can more easily find your answers, or so you can more easily communicate with other kids about where you found your answers. So without further ado, Martin Luther King Jr. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. is famous for being a peaceful civil rights leader. Civil rights are those basic opportunities that all people deserve. In January 1863, President Abraham Lincoln declared the end of slavery in the United States. When Martin Luther King Jr. was a little boy in Atlanta over 60 years later, African Americans were still treated much worse than white Americans, especially in the South. Black Americans had to go to different schools, use separate restrooms, and even use other water fountains. Restaurants or businesses could refuse to serve Black customers or to hire them for jobs because of skin color. Even though Martin was free and not a slave, the laws said it was acceptable for people to treat him unfairly based on the color of his skin. He didn't like this and wanted peaceful change. Martin led white and Black people in peacefully protesting the unfair laws. Martin is most famous for his powerful speeches like the I Have a Dream speech in Washington, D.C. on August 28, 1963. Although he died in 1968, before much change occurred, King received the Nobel Peace Prize for his civil rights work. Kids, this is super important, a super important topic, especially considering current events today. But I don't want to get too far into that. I just want to take an opportunity to celebrate Dr. Martin Luther King and what he stood for. And my biggest piece to all of this for Dr. King, and my most inspiring piece, is this word here, peaceful. Dr. King was very famous for attempting to make changes in a way that didn't cause any harm, didn't cause any violence, and didn't cause any disruption. And in a situation where he was easily justified in wanting to do those things, he chose not to. And there's one famous quote that I'm going to give you or offer you before we move on, but then I'll read the questions and then we'll go from there. And again, this is just one of my favorite quotes from Dr. King. He said, in reference to some of these events that were happening at the time, and his reason for pursuing peaceful means of changing laws, he said, darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. And to me, that's a very powerful statement. I'm not going to get it too far into the details of it in a video, but we will talk more about Dr. King when you return to school, just because I think it's a very important piece of our history. So, moving on from there, blue, who declared the end of slavery in the United States? Yellow, what are civil rights? Red, where did Martin Luther King Jr. grow up? Purple, why were Black people sometimes denied a job? Green, how did King want people to protest? And orange, when was the I Have a Dream speech? So please pause your video now and go through and find those answers, and then come back and check your work, and you will be all set for the day. Thanks, kids. I'll see you in 1 second. Now that you're back, this is what your answer key or your page should look like. Who declared the end of slavery in the United States? President Abraham Lincoln did. What are civil rights? The basic opportunities that all people deserve. All people are created equal and deserve the same opportunities to live happy and peaceful lives. Where did Martin Luther King Jr. grow up? He grew up in Atlanta. Atlanta is a city in Georgia, which is down in the southern United States. Why were Black people sometimes denied a job? Essentially because the laws said it was acceptable for people to treat him or anyone with colored skin unfairly based on the color of their skin. So it was actually written into law that this was acceptable, that people could do this, and it was considered okay at the time, which is confusing to me in some ways, or in many ways, and I just don't fully understand that, but that's how the times were. How did King want people to protest? You can see this numerous times. Peaceful, peaceful, peaceful. So you can highlight any one of those or all of those, but he was very adamant. He was very strong-willed. He was very passionate about the fact that when people protested, he didn't want anyone to get hurt. He wanted to do things the right way and in a way that was not violent in any way. And for him, in this particular case, it was very dangerous. When was the I Have a Dream speech? The I Have a Dream speech was August 28th, 1963. And the last thing I will tell you, and many of you I'm sure know this, when Dr. King died in 1968, because the work he was doing was so dangerous and so controversial, he was assassinated. Someone shot and killed him on the balcony of a hotel because they did not believe in the same things he believed in. So it's ironic in the sense that he spent his entire life looking for peaceful means of change, only to have his life end in that way. Again, I don't want to bring up too much that could be confusing to you, but please ask questions about Dr. King if you have them, whether it's to me or your parents or another trusted adult, because he was a very important person in American history. So thanks for listening to that little bit of language arts and social studies lesson. Again, we will read a biography about Martin Luther King when you do come back from school. He was not only was he a very good man, he was also a very interesting and intelligent man. So, all right, that's my spiel for today. Thanks for listening, and I hope you have great days. You are officially done if you've gone in order. So, thanks again, kids.